Feeling like Greg Turkington. Hi, guys. How are we doing? My hair's all over. Oh, shit. Are we talking about communism? Marx Madness, you want to chat? Oh, yeah? You like that Brett shit? Brett and the Pod Damn Boys? Yeah, that was a great one. I was very nervous about that, to be honest. Jake, um, Jake said that he was like asking who knew a lot about Lenin. And I was like, what do you want to talk about? And, he, um, he DM'd me and he was like, I'm trying to get somebody, who really knows their stuff and like, who maybe thinking about like an academic. And I was like, dude, I just like read a bunch of communist shit in college. I I don't know. Maybe get someone else. I was like, maybe Brett and Allison really know their shit. Um, and so he was like, actually, no, I think you'd be really good. I think you have an interesting perspective. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, so I had to read. Reread that book. Um, I had to. I reread the book and for the first time because I had rewritten. I had reread State and Revolution just recently, like a couple of years ago, when we were starting Beep Beep, I think, and that one was also really valuable and interesting for the time. I know that they said on Twitter that that you can't say that you can't smoke on camera. Can't smoke the weeds on camera. But I did. I smoked them. I smoked them. Anyway, so sorry I'm high. One of the reasons I want to talk to all you beautiful faces. Thanks for being at least 10 people. If there's less than 10 people, I feel like maybe I'm just being silly. Like who even gives a shit? Um, but thanks for people being here this late at night. Um, glad. Thanks, Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer, the best guy. Man, one of the best fans there is. Everybody give a hand to fucking Pfeiffer. Really cool guy or person. I really don't know if you're even what your gender identity is, but great person. Always really helping us out, me and Jeremy. Good job, Pfeiffer. Okay, old guy. I was in the middle of a story to Mark's Madness, who if I remember, is your name Nathan? Nathan. I was telling Nathan that I was rereading What Is to Be Done, and I was like, oh my god, this is a long book. I mean, it's not long; it's very short, but it's like I remember it being like a pamphlet. Um, but it's 150 pages, and I was like, ooh, really gotta brush up on my speed reading here. I went through it, and you know, I think we had a really good discussion about it. Hi Nathan. um, I thought it was a really fun episode. Um, and damn, I mean, I think I talked about this yesterday when I was streaming, but I was really struck by Lenin's insistence on media. Um, that was so crazy. All right, people are asking me questions in the chat, so I'm just gonna answer them. Someone asked me about Nick Land and Deleuze, wildly different thinkers. um, I haven't. I'm not gonna pretend I know anything about Nick Land. I hear he was some sort of mildly leftist guy, and then took a hard turn to the right in trying to do accelerationism. He's a big accelerationist guy. I haven't read his shit. From what I understand, it's very it's a little pedestrian. Um, So Deleuze, though, I'm not sure why. You know, capitalist schizophrenia uh, is becoming a thing. Deleuze and Guattari, I have seen it a lot. Um, I haven't read it. I'm not going to pretend like I know either. I mean, I know a little bit about the concept of like rhizomes and what they mean by that stuff. The body without organs and et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit obtuse. And I think it kind of came with the post 70s, post structuralist, postmodernism, different things. Not saying they're similar. But I haven't read much of it, and I don't know why it. I think that Deleuze and Guattari, from what I understand about what they're getting at, really do have a very great take um, on what's going on. Like I think that the sort of anti-Oedipus and capitalism and schizophrenia, uh, the those two books that make capitalism and schizophrenia are really insightful, and I think they hit a lot of incredibly important things. So I'm assuming I always just assumed that somebody who was on that in that lane, who's like a communist who um talks about philosophy, maybe Cuck Philosophy did a good video, and then people were just like, oh, let's get up on these ideas. That's what I just thought. Lawrence DL says, how do you feel about people who say that large corporations like Amazon have made distribution really efficient despite how unethical their model is, capitalism? What do you mean? I mean, they have made things really efficient in terms of exploiting people and polluting and, lowering their profit margins. Like, sure, it's very efficient. I don't think there's anything you need to say like, oh, it's not efficient. I mean, it's very efficient. I don't think that's like a good thing. Like if I efficiently murder every person of an ethnic background, it's not good. I don't get props for being efficient. Who gives a shit? It's efficiently exploiting people. It's efficiently starving people. It's efficiently ruining the fucking world. So I don't care. I don't know. I mean, I think they're bad if they say like that's good. Uh, okay, good. Okay, I was worried I was being too rude. I always think I'm being too rude. People tell me I'm rude. Uh, I really want to unpack how the American situation is unique and how our history of communist movements points towards a third party being a liability. What? I'm very interested in what you're saying here, Nathan. Do you want to hop on a call, or do you just want me to go off? Uh, I don't know. I don't know if I think that a third part. I mean, this is the problem. I think framing the concept of a third party, uh, as a third party and not a vanguard party, uh, is sort of buying into. Thanks, new followers. Um, it's sort of buying into. Um, all right, I'll explain this to you on the phone. Don't look at my discords. Oh, I'm not on the double. That's cool. All right, we're going to call Marx Madness. This is awesome. I love calling Marx Madness. You there, buddy?
Hey, what's up?
How you doing, Nathan?
Yo, what's up?
I am streaming. That's what's up.
Well, I know I was watching it and then I joined now, so
I know.
I guess the question was rather stupid. Apologies.
All
right, so explain to me why I'm wrong live on air.
right.
This will be more exciting for
me.
Is
this some sort of fetish thing?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. If you've listened to my podcast, you know I do enjoy being told I'm wrong by someone that knows more than me.
Yeah. So you're talking about. Well, tell me what you mean. You say that our history of communists, uh,
Yes.
of the way we've done communism. You mean like, or the way we've had like Black Panther Party, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and Black Panther's actually weirdly removed from what the context of what I have any expertise in. The two pieces that I've read, the two things that I've read that are starting to give me some fucked up headspace recently around this are Black Bolshevik and Hammer and Hoe. Black Bolshevik we read a long time ago, but Hammer and Hoe I just got done for the books episode, and
Books
they're both talking
episode.
about the same time period.
Okay.
Which I didn't study at all prior to those two, which is 1920, basically Depression era America, specifically Black Belt Depression America.
Black
And they both talk about the
belt.
CPUSA during the
Like
30s.
the is that like the Rust Belt?
No, Black Belt is the South, the former, basically everywhere that slaves were predominantly held during the South. So the Black
Sure.
Belt is that concentrated area where blacks outnumbered whites, and theoretically, if you were going to do any kind of, when people do this like weird dreamy, oh, we'll create a USASR kind of thing,
Uh
like
huh.
you give the Black Belt would be the only weird autonomous region of America, because it's where the black concentration is so heavy and they have such a
Sure.
distinct cultural experience that you could foresee them forming their own nation around that. um
Okay. If you wanted to be
and
separatist,
yeah,
I guess.
yeah, I don't even want to say separatist. I would just say that that group has a unique, when you go, even if you go off of Stalin's weird, and I know diverging off Lenin, but if you go off Stalin's kind of definition of the national question, where you're kind of like, all right, well, what makes a nation,
Sure.
quote unquote, and there was a lot of back and forth during the 30s with especially the very active black contingent of CPUSA,
Uh huh.
on, well, hold on, so does the national question for us mean we're a nation within a nation, or are we supposed to go back somewhere else, or are we supposed to kind of diverge? And this is all getting a little bit off the point, but
Yeah.
it kind of ties back to what blew up CPUSA back in the 30s. Was there was this very contentious split around what what do we kind of bend,
Uh huh.
which was what William Foster wanted to do, towards the kind of democratic front and towards let's appease the liberals,
Okay.
or do we want to remain very underground, very militant, but very
Mm-hmm.
committed to our ideals and stay way away from that? And that was kind of what Browder wanted. And I think both of them were wrong, but I'm trying to kind of, ever since I got finished with Hammer and Hoe, I can't really figure out where the line is with American politics, because everything, all the examples in that book are so stunning and depressing. In, yeah, everyone that was basically signed up for CPUSA and was an out and out communist and was rallying for their candidates as a revolutionary third party, all of them got thrown in jail, murdered, or completely disowned and completely isolated in a way that they weren't able to effectively do anything. And so it's like, well,
Sure.
so you look around and you go, well, fuck, everywhere else that does these things, that has these revolutions. And you talk about, especially, and it was especially listening to, I was so excited when your guys' episode came out, because you're listening to What Is to Be Done, and What Is to Be Done in left-wing communism, I think, are the two most cited examples where you get into how do we navigate electoral politics as leftists.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always comes back to this concept of, well, we have to navigate it as an exclusively revolutionary party. We don't want to integrate into the mainstream party and just make that our kind of push.
Well,
But then in
wait,
America,
wait, wait,
we're also
let me
weird
stop you
because
there.
we don't do two parties. Please
Well,
stop me. Please stop me.
no, no, well, I mean, it depends, right? It depends on the the class character of what party we're talking about, because you know in Lenin's time, they were before the Bolshevik and Menshevik split. They were working within the parliamentary system as a social democratic party, um, and
Yeah.
that was before that was in like the early 1900s, 1901, 1902, until I think the split was in like 1906, I think. But there was a lot of arguments about like who was in the party and who was. I mean, the major point was, well, it doesn't matter why, but what I'm trying to say is, like, in a system in which you can have sort of a larger big umbrella that sort of allows for pushing to the left, and not allows in terms of just like, is it literally legally possible, but I mean actually, like, can you, is there any sort of revolutionary potential within it? Yeah, I don't think it's saying you have to have a separate party that is only, like, you're not allowed to work with the parliamentary system or the bourgeois electoral system. It depends on what we're talking about, but the Democratic Party is literally a fascist party. And
And
I
I
don't,
agree.
and I think what people get confused is they've let themselves believe that the Democratic Party is like in opposition to a right wing party. And so while they're, like, as though liberalism in America is somehow like opposed to a right wing capitalist party in any way. Um, and so I think that in American society, uh, yeah, I don't think that there's much value in that. But I just wanted to make the difference. Go on.
No, and it's very important because that also gets into the so Lenin is very clear that you have to be very particular about your tactics, that nothing is either legal or illegal. You got to like really hyper specific pick and choose. Are we going illegal tactic? I mean, it was never Lenin, I don't think, and correct me if you have a different understanding, but Lenin was never really for the big like terrorist style action. Like he gets misquoted as that whole terror. The only purpose of terrorism is terror or whatever. But it's
That's
all
not
very
we talked about that on the
exactly.
episode. Yeah.
I know you did, and it was great. But it's very much not like you have to understand outside of that yeah, he didn't want terrorism. Like he very specifically didn't think individual terrorist attacks in the way we envision them, at least, were useful. So it's
Yes.
illegal and it's legal and it's pushing forward. But condense that down.
But he was also
So
pro Stalin robbing banks. Like, he wasn't like
yes,
against breaking the law. He
no,
just
break
wasn't.
the fucking law, but break the
Yeah.
law with a purpose.
And with a
Break the law
plan.
with a goal. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the thing I keep struggling with the last couple of weeks has been, okay, so I see that there was only really one good period. The 60s, I wouldn't, and again, correct me if you have a different view here, but the 60s, I really don't think were a very particularly Marxist revolutionary period. It was definitely a
Mm.
counterculture movement, but I don't think it had that especially the strength that it had in the 30s. The 30s, with when the CPUSA
Mm-hmm.
was a viable party and when membership was a legitimate thing you could pursue, and when you had and this is where it's really kind of just ramping up for me in my head, is the last time we had a depression. The
Yeah.
last time we existed
Mm-hmm.
in a period like this was the last time the Communist Party was had a powerful force. And
That's
everything I
right.
read through Black Bolshevik and Hammer and Hoe says, well, how did they gain that power? They gained their power by helping people's material conditions,
Of course.
by actually going to people through unemployment programs, helping them find the loopholes in that, fighting the WPA, and all the really callous technocratic bullshit that made that not as great as we like to make it out to be as it was.
Right. I mean,
Um,
and that's what in the episode we just did, we were talking about how Lenin was talking about how the point of a party isn't simply to just like win seats. Like, it doesn't, once you are in power, you have to have a plan, and you don't need to be like, even, you have to like be going and advising workers councils and trade unions, and radicalizing those people and putting them in positions of power within their unions, and having the
yep.
unions interact with the party, and it all has to be working together. It's not enough to just like and it's not enough to just run a person into city council. You have to also like know what you're going to do once you win.
Yes. And beyond that, even the person you run, and this is where this is my divide. The
Mm-hmm.
person you run into city council, let's say that's your first step. what letter do you put in front of their name?
You mean after their
Is
name?
it a D? Is it an R?
No,
Is it an L?
it's gotta be like a C or a V.
Can a C or a V win
Yeah.
in American politics? In the way we've construed American politics for at least the last, because it's been how many years? 150, 200 years since a third party candidate's won anything of note.
Uh, I mean, depends on what you mean by of
How
note.
how long does um I mean, again, let's even say like a local senatorial seat.
Uh-huh.
How the American system had, and again, we had a jump start on this, and this is where again I think you can't use theory as a dogma, and I don't think I don't think you do. I think you recognize this as well as anyone I've ever talked to, but again, when we're trying to say, do you run the Revolutionary Party? Do you create the Revolutionary Party? At some point, 100% fuck yes, because that's exactly the way you have to do this. But right now, I'm trying to take away anything tangible for right this second, because that's the only time I live in and can impact without. Again, I look at, and you talked about this on the episode. It's one of those weird things, and I think we've said this on a different point where someone asked on the first books episode I did with Dumb and Awful. They asked, "Hey, so how do theory is kind of boring. What the fuck do we do with it?" It's like the shitty part about theory is you never know who's right until it's over. Until it actually happened, you don't know whose bullshit you should have listened to or whose weird Twitter feed you should have listened to. And up until that point, you just you got to kind of work through it, and it sucks, and everyone's going to kind of sound like assholes.
But that's what I think.
I don't know.
Purpose,
I feel like
that's what I think the purpose of a party is, and I think that so right now, actually, I think just in the last election, somebody from the Socialist Alternative Party won in like Wisconsin or something. So it's not impossible. I think you can like do that, especially in local levels. There's lots of local parties, even in New York City, we have like Working Families Party. We have like, and they're all sort of like, corrupted and like, dealing with the mob and the Democratic Party. What's the difference? But it's not impossible to do that. What is not done, the work that is not done, is even within across a state, organization on the level of we're all getting behind this, and we're marketing ourselves as people who have done something for this community. We are organized around these ideas, and these are the principles, and we have a media facing outlet that tells people what our plans are. Those like three things just are not done.
Yeah.
No. And that is not because it's impossible. It is because we have experienced 50 years of pummeling by the CIA and the capitalists at large, into making sure the information on how to do such a thing or what the important work is has been purposefully obfuscated, and removed from possibility in the mind of the average worker. And in some cases has been made illegal, like unionizing.
Oh yeah.
In public companies is illegal because of whatever the name. I'm not a lawyer. What's the name of that fucking Janus?
Oh shit!
I think it was
Janus versus something. The dumbass Supreme Court ruling that we all know about.
Yeah. I think the Janus ruling. So I mean, some of this stuff is literally illegal. Some of it is not. But the things that aren't and the things that you can do aren't illegal, and they're not impossible. I think it is absolutely something that there's a lot of people, I think more than anything, especially on like local levels, especially in a big city like New York City or LA or even mid-sized cities like Chicago, we're just a couple like very charismatic true believers away from getting there.
Yep.
I do think that it is dangerous, and I think that anyone who tells you that it's easy, or that it, because it literally hasn't happened since the 60s.
It's never. Yeah,
Anyone who
it's
would
never
tell you
happened.
that it's, not like they wouldn't kill you, like, or like make attempts on your life or try to cancel you. This is the stuff, like, I don't I this is the stuff that you can get in trouble for saying, but like now I think they'd probably just accuse you of rape, like, more than
They'd find
any.
something. They'd find something easy to control you, and that's where it's so that
Not
kind of
saying don't believe victims or
shifts it.
whatever.
No, yeah, they would. It would be very easy. It would be very easy to do, especially exclusively. And this is where, again, I think the theory has to evolve for the times we live in and the situation we live in. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Lenin was not able to conceive of a system that we live in now.
Absolutely not. Nobody could.
Nobody could exactly, and it's sort of this funny. It's this funny thing we get like when we're reading Black Reconstruction right now, and it's hilarious because Du Bois is talking about a period in time, um, 90 years after the passage of the Constitution, and there are already people going, "The Constitution is sacred. You can't touch it."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What are you talking about? It's been 90 years. It's been 100 years.
It
How could
just
anyone
happened.
foresee how can anyone foresee this far into the future? Of course you can change it. Of course you can." And then I'm sitting here reading that 300 years in the future going, God fucking damn it.
Yeah.
It never gets better. And so when I
Right.
say Lenin couldn't foresee the situation we're in now, that's not like trying to degrade Lenin. I'm trying to say like
Of course not.
Lenin wrote for his time and he was right. There's no arguing with him because he did the damn thing.
Right.
He wrote State and Revolution. It was like, P.S. I'm off to a revolution. I'll see you in a bit.
And like a
Like,
month.
it's very, yeah, a month later, he fucking did the damn thing. Like, it's very obviously right because it's right. But the problem is, it's like we don't have anything for the American situation because the American situation hasn't popped off. So I still feel there is some room to critique the standard. There is no wrong brainstorming, I guess, in the American situation. Because and not even
Sure.
the American situation, I would just say the regular industrialized situation.
Mhm.
Because obviously Marx thought revolution was going to pop off in England first and then America. He thought it was going to pop off in Germany, England, America. He thought it was going to pop off in an industrialized nation.
Right.
Obviously, everything we've seen empirically since then says no, it's going to pop off in the most oppressed nations or the nations that can feel the contradictions most clearly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's going to pop off last in the industrialized nation. So then you sit here in the belly of the beast and go, well, shit, what the fuck do I do then? And
Well, I
it's
mean, we are
really
becoming one
there's a
of the
lot of
most
cognitive dissonance there.
but yeah, but we're definitely becoming one of the most feeling the contradictions countries that there is.
Correct.
Because of how, and I mean, trying to organize in the imperial core might be like, here's the thing. I don't think what's going to happen in my most like hopeful fantasies. Um I don't think that we can have a Soviet Union style revolution in America. I don't think that can
No,
happen. Um,
no.
and the reason for that is because they would kill us all.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I think that there's, I go back and forth on this thing because it's like, I don't think like what we've seen is the cops, right? Like if you had an actual armed citizenry, I think that they would probably be scared and wouldn't want to die and wouldn't want to kill their own fellow citizens because the
Mm-hmm.
cops are pussies. So like I don't know, like I go back and forth with like I don't really think they drone bomb hundreds of thousands of people. Um, but I think the America is too big and too broken to really like be a whole thing. Uh, so my feeling is in this sort of like global um international age, I feel like what would happen is we'd have other nations come in and support the people rebelling against the current state. Um, Depending on what country it is, they might not do the best job of like ushering the American proletariat to power. They might, if it was China, be a little bit like, well, we're gonna come in and do a little invasion and a little bit of, sort of making sure you guys aren't gonna, we're gonna disarm all your nukes and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it would be a
Yeah, all
takeover
the
by a
things that
different
threaten
invader.
our existential power.
Sorry.
No, yeah, China doing that right now would be like, let's turn off all the things that threaten our shot at hegemony, because everyone wants a shot at hegemony.
Right. And I mean, me personally, do I think that China would have a better like international rule than America? Yeah. But like that's not necessarily saying a lot, but I would
President Xi, come do things to me, please.
I mean, I just think that it would take I think that it would take a citizen led uprising because I don't, China hasn't made any single move to support the burgeoning left movement in America.
No,
that I know of. I mean, maybe they've got their intelligence agencies coming over, but I don't think
it's
so.
exclusively Russia, Brandon. You know that. We've been told that on MSNBC. It's all Russia. China's done nothing.
Yeah, China it only does stuff in their own country.
They create viruses and cause pandemics.
Yeah, they murder people because they're Muslim, even though there's whatever. I'm not going to get into it.
Extreme. OG Spider. No, 100% agreed. Like, as long as people can go to Walmart and get stuff off the shelves, nothing would happen. It's never going to happen under those circumstances. That's what kind of stresses me out a little bit, is that I don't know what that means. Because yeah, as long as there's food in the stores, people won't do anything.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, like I think that there's
as long as people can afford the food in the stores, I think is the bigger underscore there.
Yeah, but who? Like how many homeless people are there in this country? There's 50% unemployment in this country. Like there's always going to be people who can afford the food, but like
what percent?
That line is going to get really stark. And like I was just saying earlier today on an episode of Beep Beep that hasn't come out yet, if you look at what the capitalists are saying, we're moving us to a place where we don't have to pay for food, we just rent things. Like everything is rented, we don't own houses, we probably like subscribe to food deliveries or whatever.
Back to Hammer and Hoe, that is very real, and we've already done it. Like the last depression we had, all of the company store stuff took off during that period. So when you had food certificates and again, literally company commissaries, like people are talking about, well, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. Like if like Jeff could come out with a very modified version of the company store tomorrow that includes housing, that would make him look like a progressive hero.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean,
except it would be absolutely the most depraved depths of capitalist excess that we've ever seen.
Right. It's so, I mean, there is TrueAnon did an episode on this thing called the Great Reset. Have you ever heard of that? And
vaguely, like, isn't that like that we're all gonna use the pandemic to just hit a boop button and reset everything back to kind of like the plague status?
So there's this weird right wing conspiracy that the Great Reset is just that the COVID is fake, but that's not what it is. If you listen to the people at Davos, they just call it the Great Reset. There's a Great Reset podcast, and the Davos plan that is called the Great Reset is to commoditize literally everything that exists, every leaf on a tree, every molecule of water. It is to create an enormous AI controlled Excel file that sort of commoditizes literally everything on the planet. and that would result in a situation where everyone has to pay for everything all of the time. um and so that's where the sort of like you live in there's no home rentalship, there's no car ownership, there's no, everything is becomes a rented commodity. uh Someone says, what if cybersyn, but it's Skynet and broken? Yeah,
They're not wrong.
exactly.
We didn't we just put water? Didn't we just put water on the commodities market today?
That's right. Um, and that kind of stuff is the stuff they've been talking about. Peter Thiel and these freaks at Davos. That's the kind of stuff they've been talking about. They've been talking about this for years now. So, you
Yeah.
know, to me, that's going to happen if we don't stop it. And I think there is a level of a communist party that can take away, start wrenching away power and pushing uh, the Overton window, at least to stop the horrors of things like that. I mean, like, here's the thing, those like teleological like progression of uh, ideology and
Yeah.
economic ways of forms, like it's like starts with like um, what do you call it? Uh,
Oh
Royalty,
shit.
like monarchy, and then it goes into like capitalism, and then it goes to like socialists, and then it goes to like communism or whatever.
Correct.
Um, that it's out. The implication is always that we'll go one way, and the fact is that
Mm-hmm.
they can absolutely go backwards. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's a tug of war. It's a, the power doesn't just, we don't always hold the wins we've got, and the Soviet Union was a huge leap, and a epoch breaking uh, economic shift, but they saw the writing on the wall of what could be the future. And if we don't stop them from pulling us back into the Stone Age of, feudalism, then they will. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they basically started. This whole past century has been like trying to get away with slavery and feudalism without, like, really pretending, being honest about it.
Mm-hmm. And it's back to the rose. I mean, you're 100% nailing it. Where it's there isn't a linear progression of things. It doesn't go. It's going to be awful, and then we'll get to the end, and it'll be great. It's always at every junction. It's socialism or barbarism, and
Yeah.
you can call them different things, but you're always going to be at that particular juncture. You're always going to be facing a left or right turn, or something that hews towards some centrist bullshit, which is what the neoliberals have been trying to do for the last 50 years, give or
Yeah.
take.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is hew to this center that keeps everything just stable enough, but not quite exploded. And this goes back to kind of the only thing I feel like I have any any credence to talk about based on my recent week that I've spent indulged in this bullshit,
Uh-huh.
which is America in specific, not looking at socialist movements outside of America, not looking at anything outside of America, looking at just the conditions in the world in which I am allowed to interact and have some sort of agency, has only had one real solid socialist push. And it was the right after the Bolshevik Revolution, the 1920s into the 1930s,
Mm-hmm.
and then it died in the 50s. It died by the late 40s, frankly. And it was marked by the two-party system essentially saying, no, you're not allowed to interact with us. And if you put yourself on a public record that says you are trying to challenge our autonomy, we will either kill you, alienate you, or bankrupt you with lawsuits in a way that makes you completely destitute.
Yeah.
I don't know how to interact. So if that is the option, the other option presented to me is go underground, do not associate yourself publicly as a this, that, or the other, and try and integrate yourself into organizations that exist already and push from within, which has always felt dirty to me as a Lenin raised communist, that that's the wrong way to do it. But
Well, I
in
I don't know
I
if
have
I
not seen
get
an option other than that.
I don't really get what you mean. Like, what does that look like? You mean like be a Democrat?
Yeah. So the example from the again the and exclusively the two works I'm working off of are Hammer and Hoe and Black Bolshevik because that's all I have. I have nothing else. So if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong and show me and please because I'm trying to find a way out of this hole. Um, is we had our power when we were an underground movement. When we were underground, when we weren't publicly registered, when we were just able to organize as individuals, organize to each other, figure out what we needed, and then we all kind of had an underground communication network, which again may not exist in the 21st century. I
Yeah,
don't know.
my first
That's when they were
criticism is like,
powerful.
what do you mean underground? I don't think
And
you
that's
can.
and that's valid. That's valid. It may not even the concept of underground may not exist anymore. And if that doesn't exist, then what the fuck is the next step? What else do we have? Because obviously the other option was whenever they formed a small viable party, even though it was
Hmm.
nascent, not able to really challenge the Communist Party in America was never able to challenge really, but they were able to make realistic gains and be a strong enough party to force some level of change when the Soviet Union existed to back them up. That's
Yeah.
not there anymore. Now we don't even have that. And everything else, every person that was publicly associated with that party got murked in such a way that who would ever pursue a path like that? Because the only thing that looks forward to you at the end is you either die or you get alienated in such a way that you're not able to sustain yourself as a human being anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like, what is the other option?
Hang on, reading the chat. Someone says, I visited Henry Wallace's grave a couple of years ago. I realized he was buried a mile away. Normalize Marxism, Leninism, so we don't seem like cranks. I mean, is that their? That might be their answer to you. Normalize it.
Please.
But I think that that is what happened. I mean, I don't think that you're wrong. That 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 communism was sufficiently snuffed out in this country to the point that we can easily say that the fascists won. Um, and especially if you look at who did the winning, um, and what that those people who they associated with and what they did and how they interacted with the Nazis um, in the 50s and 60s after the war. We are, in my opinion, living in the Fourth Reich.
Mhm.
So
I agree.
it's not necessarily. I'm not disagreeing with you that those are the things that happened, and we are in the beginning of Star Wars, right? Like, with it's over. The Empire won.
Yep.
But that doesn't, to me, um, I don't think that means that like time moves on, right? And like
Correct.
as the state has sort of, what's interesting materially that's different from the 60s is that the CIA had just been created. There was fervor against communism. There was an ideological head. There was Alan Dulles, someone who had a very specific view of the world and how politics worked. And there was a pointed mission, right, of anti-communism. But what's interesting is that because they were anti-communist and pro, Ayn Randian libertarianism, sort of, but really actually basically real fascists who believed in consolidating power to a monarch, basically, or an oligarchy, a ruling class. Like, Alan Dulles wasn't like explicit on this kind of thing, but basically talked this way, as though it was, something he really understood, him and his brother. Um, but the problem is that he's dead, and a lot of what the CIA was made for is kind of gone. And then we had more decades where we basically, in my personal opinion, created wars and
Yeah.
tragedies in America to sort of keep the machinery running. And we're started, well, we're not drug dealing in South America anymore. Let's go to the Middle East and get opium, and let's sell guns over there and sex traffic from these places. And it's just sort of a different sort of the gears are turning, but the ideological drive of the state, the deep state, the actual state, in my opinion,
Yeah.
has become diffuse, and it has been replaced by profit. And we can see that in the fact that America is unable to respond to shit that actually harms them. Um, and what I mean by that is that the state has the goal of people like Dulles was to create an opulent ruling class, and he succeeded in that. But the Koch brothers also had a very intense ideological project, which was for them to be a part of it and for them to be allowed to do whatever they want legally. But what that means is the actual apparatus of the state uh, doesn't have those levers of power anymore. And they're at the will of whatever dipshit fail son inherits billions of dollars, including, namely, Elon fucking Musk. And so, like, this guy, the in a way, there's a certain kind of petite bourgeois like character to these people. And the thing is that the state doesn't have a real apparatus. Like, of course, they're not going to just like they're not going to be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, communism, if you have $1 billion. Like, I'm not saying that or anything, but the machinery of being aware of these things, I do believe, is slipping. And I think it's because, like, they're ideologically on these wheels that disallow them from doing basic things to even save their own economy, such as not dealing with a fucking pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, the technocratic ideology has resulted in a contradiction so deeply that you are seeing them literally eating themselves. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think it's unfair to extrapolate from what we see in the 20s now is not the 90s. This is
No.
not the beginning of the end. We are seeing a crumbling of the sort of shining finale of their victory, but their whole plan was to destroy their own state apparatuses. And so if you look at at it that way, I think no matter what the case is, what we're going to see within the next 10 to 20 years is the complete collapse of the facade of the liberal democratic state and the sort of American revolutionary dream and idea. And what's going to happen is it's going to be dispersed into a corporate state, like a real live fascist, like
Yeah.
Italian style fascist state,
Yeah.
but will
Right.
be sold to us as a an abundance of choice. But I don't think my optimism, so much that I have it, is that it won't work. Because they've weakened, like I say, they've weakened the apparatus of control to the point that any dipshit with money, or I mean fucking clout enough to enter those gates of controlling the media, can just do it. Um, so I
Yeah.
think I think that if there is something to be have a little hope about, is that we're watching the crumbling of an empire begin. If not, we're right in the middle of it. And so, yeah, I don't think that they're going. I mean, look, I think they are actually killing people in Ferguson too. I don't think that they're like. I don't think there's any
As a person
slow
who lives an
down.
hour from Ferguson, yeah, no, they're doing that. I
Yeah,
can confirm,
I
hard
think,
confirm they're doing that.
but I think that that's because no one's paying attention. And if
I
they,
agree.
we live in an era now, like a lot has been made about the sort of cameras of on cops, you know, and how that's sort of changed the entire structure of how we understand the concept of police. Um, and I don't. I think there is a danger of thinking of this structure of American surveillance as uh, impervious and and invincible. And while it is incredibly strong and well constructed, if there is not the political will among everybody in the state apparatus and being controlled by the state apparatus to accept those things, then it can and will fall apart, I think. Does that answer your question?
And I
I mean,
well,
I
no,
went
it
off a little bit.
does.
I'm sorry.
I feel like I went off a little bit on this. That's the whole point here. Is
Mm-hmm.
I hope it branches out that way. I think the biggest thing I've taken away from the last I took a vacation week the last week to basically sit in a hole and read books for a week to get ready for my second stint on Dumb and Awful for books too.
Uh,
Um yeah. And the nothing really hit me differently. Nothing really hit me that fundamentally changed the way I looked at the world, but Hammer and Hoe did, only because it reinforced a thing that I got from Black Bolshevik,
mm-hmm.
which was that concept of, look, y'all can have read Lenin, y'all can understand Lenin, take that out into the world, try and emulate that as best you can, hit it 100%, and then you're going to need to realize that your conditions are different.
Right.
And your conditions are fundamentally different in ways that are not even, it's not small tweaks, it's monumental changes to the system level different. And I don't know, this is a failure of mine. I'm not pointing this out to anyone else. This is I thought kind of in my head, it's like, well, hold on, if I get enough of this, if I understand what made it work somewhere else, if I understand enough of this theory, eventually I will be able to understand what I need to do. And the answer I got at the end of all of it seems to be, you've got to understand this for yourself, and you have to understand this in your own condition, and that means that you're going to have to kind of make it up as you go, and that's scary.
No,
Terrifying.
absolutely. And what's scary, and this is one of the things I got to at the end, and I of the episode we were talking about, is that, like, if we really believe that we should be at least trying everything that worked in Lenin's time, we're going to have to do a little bit of interpretation on what that would look like in our time. And the thing is that I don't know if there's anybody besides me who's even. I mean, please, I'm not like trying to say that I am a genius, or that I'm like off on my own path or anything. I mean, I think about this stuff all the time, but I don't actually read. I don't like watch other people's streams or anything. So if lots of people are saying this, please, please, please link me to them and tell them to come on my show or whatever. But as far as I know, there's nobody who's trying to organize anything that Lenin is saying in any of his books,
No.
except for me. Like, and honestly, I haven't even been as loud about it as I want to, and I've often done it in private, private spaces. Like talked privately with many other podcasters and many other people who are in, I am a part, I'm a, I'm a part of the worker co-op of Means TV. Like my goal in all of this is to create a united, I mean, we've talked about this street fight. Like my goal in all of this is like to create a, maybe I shouldn't mention Means TV. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but like, and this is the kind of thing that's really hard to talk about because everyone doesn't want to be seen as a careerist or putting themselves in a position of like, oh, look at me, I'm important. Everyone's
No.
very afraid of that because of like the fucking whole culture we live in. Um,
Yeah.
but but I don't know anybody else who's saying what we need is to look at what Lenin did and take that exactly and then translate that to now. And the way I see that is online internet media that can get as many people as possible, and there has to be a cohesive ideological line that says here's what we want and here's what we should do. Um, and that it can't just be entertainment. It can't just be cum jokes and weed. I mean, and that's fun and it can be a part of the
It can be
attraction.
part of it.
It can be a part
It
of it.
needs to be.
I mean, it's always going to be with me. But I'm saying like it like look, I've been doing this podcasting thing for like 2 years. I can't stress to you how many people have come to me. And this is the reason I'm doing these streams, asking me like, what do we do? Okay, like I agree with everything saying, you've radicalized me. Like, what do you think I should do? Like me personally, I'm just some asshole in fucking some middle flyover state or whatever. I'm working a shitty job. I listen to you as a fucking truck driver. Like, do you know how crazy it is for me to imagine that there's kids working at a 7-Eleven, not, like fighting off suicidal ideation, listening to me fucking tell them that they should unionize and then being like, yeah, I should. Like, that shit is powerful. I don't care. And I don't care if that makes me seem like a fucking, like, narcissistic asshole. That's insane. We
No,
live in and like, you can't go through that kind of thing and be like, okay, well, we shouldn't utilize this. Like the reach that I have is nothing compared to people like even people on Twitch. It's to something like Vouch or I mean, I don't think he has good politics, but like
No, but you're right, and that it's embarrassing because I'm fucking over here crying. No, it's the same shit. I get that shit. I'll get a person that emails us and just says, "Hey, you've helped me find my path, and I'm listening and I'm reading shit now." And it's like, and then you realize you're not alone in that. There's other people out there trying to do it, and yet we're all disparate. We're not united in a way that makes us powerful. We all are kind of isolated in our own little groups.
But this is how bad it is. Like the fact that you like the idea, like a fucking computer message, a text saying like when you realize you are not alone and you're not even looking at a fucking person, that like that fucking like messes with your head to the extent that you're like emotionally affected by that. That's insane. And so anyway, what I'm saying is that like for me, it's imperative for us if we want to do anything, the people who have this platform, any platform, to organize ourselves. We have to be able to organize enough to like have a ideological line, and we don't have to start a party ourselves because what Lenin says is that the newspaper creates the party. The newspaper is the scaffolding for a party. It's a temporary thing that you put up so that there can something can be built around it or inside of it, right?
So is podcasting the scaffolding of the party right now?
It isn't, but it can be.
Dumb, could it be?
Yeah, I absolutely believe it can be. Like it's how people interact and it's how people are radicalized. Like you can't look at Chapo Trap House and not think that they were incredibly instrumental on radicalizing hundreds of thousands of kids.
For the record, anyone listening, Chapo Trap House is the only reason I have a podcast right now.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
anyone ever wants to dunk on Chapo, if it was not for Chapo, I would not have a podcast right now. Period. I would not exist as a podcasting entity, whatever I am. Period.
Right. And I mean, sure, criticize everybody. I mean, criticize me, criticize every single person. But like,
Ruthless criticism of all that exists. Something.
blah blah blah. But I'm just saying, like, the it has become uh cr- very important to recognize the way that people get their politics, and that is increasingly and almost entirely at this point. This is the thing, most people don't even have politics. If they have politics, they listen to podcasts. Like, I'm sorry, that's just how it works. You listen to
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, or you listen to Chapo, or you listen to Ben Shapiro, or whatever. But if you have politics, you're listening to podcasts. And so, like, or YouTube's, right? I'm not really differentiating here. I'm talking about like electronic media of, people that have millions of followers. Mostly it's YouTube and Twitch and podcasts. It's all the same stuff. Um, and so, you know, that's just how it works. And it's honestly such a weirdly American thing to imagine that you're somehow like, you got your politics more from something else. Like, I don't really get why it's even taboo. It literally is taboo to talk about this. And it makes people uncomfortable. But like, we're so alienated already, and so like irony poisoned, that we're like, oh, I'm just listening to like, it's that thing. Remember cracked.com? Like
Oh
crack.
my! You mean the thing I read incessantly when I was working for the Senate? Yes, very familiar with crack.com.
Yeah, like they were always fucking like railing that media is important, and media has ideological messages within it, and they were
Yep.
constantly getting pushback from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
No, all the time.
they were constantly having people make fun of them and be like, you think Batman means something, you think I'm dumb enough, you think I'm weak. That's sort of the implication, right? That like, if you listen to a person talk and you take anything from it, you're weak or something.
Yeah.
Like,
That was, and it was like watching Cody and all these people that came out of that. All of a sudden, those be people that are very obviously trying to do good on the left, but struggling through it. It's like, yeah, I can't imagine evolving in an ecosphere like Cracks or whatever it was they lived in, and then trying to how you hew left in that environment, how you hew left and stick to
mm-hmm,
some sort of consistent messaging when you're trying to, if your goal is get clicks and that's how you exist in the universe, and then making something that is pure and uncut or whatever. It's,
mm-hmm.
I I don't know. It was hard. That was really hard for me to watch someone like Cody that I feel like I like spent the last 8 years of my life watching and kind of
Really
slowly but surely
respecting.
pointing. Yeah, exactly. Like even when I was not hard left political, it was watching and enjoying, and then watching him kind of come into a space that I was in and be like, yeah, you're getting there, man. You're kind of there, but you're hitting it on a different point. But that's fine.
Yeah,
You've got a
yeah.
different audience, and you're trying to hit different points. And then watching other people I respect go at him, I'm like, God damn, can we just like agree that everyone's trying to push us in the right direction for a second? Like, maybe?
Well, especially
No?
with Cody. I
Okay.
mean, like with Cody, I mean, I got into an argument with him on Twitter, and then it was civil and respectful enough that he followed me after it. So I thought that was a nice win for me.
Are you,
Um
that was not an argument with Cody. You were just having an engagement with Cody.
oh
Like,
yeah,
that
but it's
was
fucking the
like,
internet. So I mean, uh
fuck the internet.
so what I'm saying is that um like, it's, if you're trying to do it alone, and you're trying to be, you know entertainment as well, and then also trying to make it a living, you've got a lot of pressure to do a lot of other things than what fucking Lenin said. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason that people aren't doing this because
God,
like
yeah.
people like, you know, people like all of my friends, all of the people who are in uh you know, in podcasting and YouTubing or whatever are trying to or already do it for a living and don't want to stop people doing it for a living. But it's funny that people, and then the people who try to do anything political as a podcast generally are trying to do it in a way that feels to people, I think, very disingenuous, or just seems sort of useless and sort of self-serving. Um, and so I think there's absolutely a reason it hasn't happened. And I'm not trying to like call anybody out. I think a lot of people are trying, but it's hard. But I think if there's a place that I feel like I can start, and if I think that you feel like you should be able to start, it's this. It's figuring out like
Yeah.
how do the people who have an audience um, use that outreach to say, here's what we can do. These are the ideological stakes that we must have, and this is what the plan is. And are people going to probably die? Are people going to, people are already dying, so
Yes.
like, I don't know.
That's the part. That's the part that it is hard to, as an alive, as a living person, and as a person that the revolution likely would not take. Like again, on the stakes of it,
What does that mean?
when you live on the outskirts of this, where it is not your day-to-day life, but it is it. I don't know how to articulate it. It was something I felt. I only felt it for the first time when I was in the Pacific Northwest last year. I
Dark
never deal with
vibes.
this on a day-to-day basis. I live in the middle of rural ass Missouri. I
Okay.
don't feel class struggle on a minute-to-minute basis because we're in a pandemic and we're all locked in our houses. It was not until I was in an area that dealt with that acutely that I could feel
Okay.
any sort of attachment to it. And even then, I felt wrong being there. I wanted to go and go, 100%. I agree with you. And I want to can we fight someone right now? Like, I want to do anything to vent this energy, to vent this feeling of righteous fear. Like, I understand why this is wrong and I know why it's wrong. And if I could chop it off at its head, I would.
Hmm.
And yet I can't do shit.
Right.
Can't do anything
Well,
on
you
all
can't.
on a minute to minute basis.
But that's me. What I think is important is that like we do have to recognize that like as individuals, no one can do anything. Um, but that's the whole point of a party. Um,
Yeah.
and that's the whole
That
point of having a party apparatus is to
yeah.
say, okay, well, everybody has different jobs. And when you are having in that moment and you have the opportunity and you have the wherewithal and you have the will to do something with your fellow people, then it's like, well, what do I do? And you could just like look it up and just be like, okay, I'm going to go over here and go do it, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't even, people haven't even really thought of like how to even utilize the things we have. Like like what if you make a prank video about unionizing a McDonald's? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be like, everyone has these weird like Amish attachments to like the way things are, like the Trotskyists with their newspapers. You know what I mean? Like, walking around handing somebody a quote unquote internationalist newspaper isn't going to do anything. Like, you need to have a TikTok where you go and like, have you ever seen that YouTube video? I think about this constantly. Have you ever seen a YouTube video where it's like these YouTubers who are like, I'll give you $1,000 if you quit your job right now. And they just like go through a drive through of like a Chick-fil-A and like they say that to people.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
What? Yeah, I've been on TikTok too much. Yes, I've seen it once or twice.
Like is that is the kind of ideological thing that you could use, not to give people $1,000 to quit their jobs, but like you could literally like ask people like, what do you hate most about your job? You know what I mean? Like there could be content that is
Yes.
about
Yes.
like street fight type shit. Like, what's the worst thing your boss does? Like, how much do all of you make? You know, like, ask questions that would make their boss mad if they were there. You know what I mean? Like,
Show people the thing that unites them, as opposed, again, this was the biggest thing that I'm learning, is that there is more that unites the vast majority of us than divides us. As dumb and cliche as that shit sounds, there really, really, really is. Like, the
yeah,
I have more in common with a working class person in Venezuela than I do with a ruling class person in America is true.
100%.
And there is so much that we all resonate. Like, when I talk to people, like when people reach out and go, I'm working my shitty job in an oil field, and my boss is doing this, this, and this, and I'm like, I've never worked in an oil field, but I worked at a fucking cell phone store, and my boss did all of that same shit.
Yeah.
Like, we all fucking know what that feels like intrinsically. And that's the thing. Like, if you just, hey, did your boss do this? Like, I don't know you. We've never seen each other, right? Cool. Did your boss do this, or this to you in the last month? Yep. Okay, cool. Glad we all understand what we're all going through. Let's do something about it, right? Here's my card. Let's do podcasting.
And again, like, what Lenin says about a party is not to just fucking elect somebody, but the point is to take those ideas that we all know, is not to say, oh, we all know that working is bad, but to connect those things to a broader understanding of ideology and internationalism. And, you know, it's not just you being a Starbucks employee. The person at the Gap feels this way too. The person at the Amazon warehouse feels this way too. And why do you think that is? You know, and educating people on the broader structures of capitalism. And like, I bet, you know, going up to people and being like, I bet I can show you how to get paid $6 more an hour. You know what I mean? And like, I bet if we all do this together, we could do it in 2 months. And like, you know, though it's not going to be just go do that and start a YouTube video and just like hope people do it or something. Like, it has to be a plan. It has to be something we all agree on, that it's something that we could all do.
Hey, you know, your boss is stealing money from you by making you clock in 10 minutes earlier than you're supposed to be for your shift. Did you realize that over the course of X amount of hours, that equals more than the entire like burglary of America over the course of a year? Cool. Let's bring that all to corporate and then cause the whole system to collapse. Like, it wouldn't take a lot, but it just takes a very concerted effort from a group that has the resources to do it, to kind of shine a light on it.
Right,
and
but you don't
it can
even
feel isolating when we're alone.
But you don't even really need like a huge group with a lot of resources anymore, because we fucking have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have Twitch, and it's like there's people who get tens of thousands of people watching their shit, but don't really even like, when was the last time you heard literally anybody on a podcast tell you how to unionize?
Like, I've been in a union, and I don't think I've effectively learned how to unionize yet.
Yeah, like, I have heard all of one single podcast, which was Chapo, and they had Brace Belden, who was at the time unionizing Anchor Beer. He was involved in the union effort, which they succeeded and successfully unionized that company. It was the first time. Did someone check it in the chat?
Yes, someone in chat got it. Good work, chat.
Yeah, Brace did that. This is literally the only episode I've ever heard of any podcast that was like, here are step-by-step thing that you personally could do. And it was all vague. Like, I mean, no shade to Brace. It's an incredible episode. Everyone should listen to it. But like, you know, it was like, here's what we're doing, and here's in this particular kind of factory setting of an independent beer company, what we could do. And this is what we're doing, and it worked. And like, as far as I can tell, there's a lot of people who took that and tried it at their jobs. Like, there's lots of places that video game design companies, fucking like little tech startups. I mean, me, myself, I used to work at a tech startup, and you have no fucking idea how easy it is, because fucking everybody is either an insane objectivist, like, when, you know, weird Ayn Randian guy, or they're a fucking left communist or something. You know, they're people in the tech world are very weird like that. And it was so easy to get like most people to agree that, you know, you just like go talk to the people who are getting paid the least and be like, hey, wouldn't it be good if we had a union here? And they're like, yes. It's not even fucking hard. And this is what I'm saying, is that like, if we can do it unorganizedly, and just like if Brace Belden can go on arguably the most popular, socialist podcast,
Yes.
um,
Not arguably.
that I know.
Find
Well,
somebody bigger.
I don't really know. I can't really think right now. Um, and say
I'll
that,
get
and that
tougher.
has an effect, even though there's no like organized like push, right? There's no like, oh,
Yeah.
every show will talk about this and we'll talk about different things and we'll all say like we're having like unionization week and here we'll take calls and we'll talk to people and like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many
Yeah.
more steps we could do. People someone wait before I go on, someone when I mentioned this basically we're saying that this is what I've been talking about is the Belden program, which is a thing that he's been talking about on True and on, and I actually haven't figured out what he's talking about because they kind of always joke about it, and he says it's like fucking women or whatever. But I think that he actually apparently he went on Antifada and talked a little bit about the quote unquote the Belden program, and I think it might be similar. So I don't think I'm the only person saying this, and I think obviously Brace has a much bigger platform than me. So I just want to say
Really?
that what? Yeah.
I
He,
don't know how the left fucking podcast shit works. You and Brett are the two I look up to, and I just assume you're the biggest. That's how this works.
no, I don't have. I only have
Nah.
6,000 Twitter followers. Um,
Fuck
but
Twitter followers. I have more subs than I have Twitter followers. I don't trust that shit.
oh, I don't know how many subs I have, but I can't compare. But anyway, yeah, they're really big on Patreon and blah blah. Blah. Anyway, that's not the point.
Nah.
But it doesn't. I mean, I want to be able to tell the people who listen to me. There's some of them. Um, and I think that this is something that we should all be pushing on, you know if we want there to be party scaffolding, which I want there to be party scaffolding. um it can't just be me and Brace, maybe. We've got to like say what we want and put that out there. um and we should be organizing ourselves, anybody who's doing this stuff, and like trying to figure out, staying in contact and trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, I mean, I think that that is a step, a small step, right? Like, I mean, that's not
Yeah.
going to get people in actual power. But, if you're like, look, like Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan, if they wanted to mobilize people, they could. And like, I think at least one of
Yep.
those guys has like instigated big protests. And I think that,
Yeah.
we should know that protests are bullshit and don't do anything. And they're basically a neutered form of strikes. It's just
Yep.
like strikes without the power where you don't do anything. You go on a
It
weekend and
strikes where you took a vacation day before you went on strike.
yeah, it's on the weekend and you don't do anything. Um, it doesn't actually scare anybody, but they control people. You know what I mean? Like if they have the reach, they can have people do stuff. And that kind of power is very scary to somebody who grew up in this culture and is afraid of being called an authoritarian, or being afraid of like just literally being accused of like narcissism, or like, oh, why do you think you should have power? And that kind of stuff is like 100% like, the fascists in your head. Like I don't think that that's how it should work. Like if you
No.
think you can affect change and you think we can build, if we can direct people to do something that is actually useful and going to make their lives better, we should absolutely be doing that. So I so yeah, your main question was basically like, can we do something? Right? Like can we
Yeah, I
do a
mean, I wish
party?
it was more specific than that, but yeah, no, it's can we do something, and is that something outside of what we currently do?
Right. Someone said lib shit. I can't tell who they're talking about.
Tracks.
Uh, Tell me what you're talking about. Blame Scott. Um,
That may be protests. I think they're talking about protests or lib shit.
oh yeah, it is. Um, but I mean, the party. Okay, so now you have to imagine that if we had a a media organization that reached, say, as many people as Ben Shapiro reaches, which isn't, worldwide. It's not nationwide, right? We're not talking about like mainstream media. We're not talking about, you know, a significant portion of the country. We're talking about kind of a niche thing. Like even Ben Shapiro, he only gets like, I don't know, 2 million listeners or something. It's a lot,
Yeah.
but um the thing about it is like we are like imagine communists with an agreed upon line of like what we want to do is we want to create as many unions as possible and we want to run people in every state. And then that was the plan, and that's the kind of outlet that there existed to inform people on how to do that step by step if they wanted to, with YouTube videos, or whether it's YouTube videos or Means TV videos or Twitch or podcasts or all of them. Like, if you have that kind of infrastructure as a media outlet, you start having people who don't have to say, well, what fucking party do I join? They say, the fucking people I look up to and respect said I can do this. And then if we all just like meet up at this like place, we can just like get together and do it. That's how you start a party. You know what I mean? And that doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
have to mean, do you run somebody with a C or a D on their name? Like, that comes later. But once you have the will of people to do something and a mechanism to take the boiling steam and put it into something that powers an engine, then you have a party that we won't know what we're able to do until we even have until we have the legs to run. You know what I mean? Like, we won't know how far we can get until we do it. But we've never had that before. No one's ever tried it before in America post the internet. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's I think it's a little bit pessimistic to look at the material conditions of the 1970s and say, well, the CIA literally just killed Kennedy and now has like absolute control, and did a military coup of America underneath everyone's sleeping eyes, and they're like at the height of their power, and say because that they killed everybody and actually won that battle, totally won, decisively, that in 2020, what is that, 50 years later, um, that we are in the exact same place, because I don't think we are. Like, the tool of the internet was a mistake for them. I think that like they thought like the surveillance control that they would have would be absolutely overwhelming any of the organizational problems that it is. And I don't know if that gambit has worked. You know, we haven't really seen much in the way of like actual people using the internet to have like actual revolutions, except for like, but I mean, Haiti's gotten close, like there's lots of different stuff that's been happening. So I think we're just nascently learning to use this tool, and so I have a lot of hope um on on trying stuff. You know what I mean?
And I always want to have the hope, because
You
that's I
got it.
think the thing that drives this. If you lose hope in the left in specific, what are you doing this for? If you have no hope but you're on the left, I don't know how you exist. I
Mm-hmm.
really don't get the doom pill crowd. Like, if that's what you honestly believe, why are you on this side? Like, there's easier routes to that, but
Well,
um
it's funny because I was just listening to Matt Chrisman did a stream earlier today of saying, like, I think his line on the whole concept of like the doomer is like, look, you can be sad, but you care a lot.
yeah.
And you if you didn't care, you would be doing something else. You'd be having fun, uh, doing anything else. But you can't have a fucking political Twitter and spend all day fucking arguing with people on Twitter about politics and then say, "Oh, I don't think we can do anything." You think you can do something. You're just sad
Yeah.
because you haven't like because you are aware of all of this stuff and you understand that
Mhm.
we are in a bad place and you are starting to begin to realize that we've lost a battle before you even were aware that we were fighting it. Um and that's fine. You can be sad, but there is no doomer. Like you either are you have some hope in you that we're going to be able to do something, or you
Yeah.
just stopped caring. And like I think that's a totally different thing. Lots of people in
Yeah.
this country don't give a shit at all. Like I said before, most people don't even
Correct.
have politics. Uh,
And because politics doesn't, people that don't have politics is because politics doesn't affect them. You can have you can
no.
say I have no politics because politics aren't directly affecting my day-to-day ability to live or aren't encroaching on my ability to do whatever it is that I want to do.
Well, no, I mean I think there's a lot of poor people who don't really have politics and it's because they've sort of been atomized and
Hmm.
individualized to the point that like have you ever met a guy who's just like a rise and grind guy? You know what I mean? Like
Too many of them, yes.
like they're don't have any money. They're always like going from job to job. They're always on a different grind. Those people are very stressed. Those people, they don't really have. I mean, they have an ideology in themselves, which is like I am the only person who's going to help myself, and I have to do it, and I'm gonna like I'm trying to make myself a millionaire or whatever. These aren't real politics. They're just like an internalization of lies, um, of misdirects. Um, so I think I mean, maybe this is like, I guess we can be pedantic and talk about like if that's having politics. But what I mean is that like
No.
most people don't think about the game show of politics in terms of Democrats and Republicans. And definitely most people don't think of politics as anything outside of that. Um, which would be like most people aren't fascists, most people aren't like weird Odinists or monarchists, and most people
No.
aren't like socialists. Um, they don't. Most people don't have the political education, and again, this is the thing Lenin was talking about: is that people want to pretend that the theoretical intelligentsia isn't important to the revolution, and the thing is that like lots of Twitter communists want to have this the same. They want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to say like, well, anybody can read. It's classist to suggest that you can't understand, 100-year-old book about Twitter infighting from when they didn't have Twitter. Like they want to say that and say like, oh, anybody can do it. Everyone should, and that's fine. But they also want to say that that you don't need to have anybody tell you explain anything to you, you know what I mean, like uh that should be enough. And so that's fucking insane. Like there needs to be people who had the privilege or the capability or the however you want to say it, who you know I I grew up in a situation where for whatever reason I was homeschooled and I had a proclivity towards reading, and I was able to read and I could read throughout. I went to a art school, a kind of a trade conservatory, which is kind of like a college. It was kind of college, and I read a lot of philosophy, and lots of people don't have the luxury of doing that. And so to say that like we don't need academics or theoretical intelligence, an intelligentsia that is able to read and process and interpret and disperse theory to people, is stupid. Like I and and
Yeah.
if you're a communist and you think that, then fucking read Lenin because he says the opposite. So like, uh, you know, uh, we need to have theoretical, like we need to have theory and we need to have intelligent educated people involved in the party. We need to have working class people who know what the problems are on the ground. And then you need to have those sort of outreach people who are good charismatic leaders and people who are good at marketing be able to take those and tell those theoretical ideas and then translate them to the working class and tie them to uh, the broader communist ideological movement. Um,
Yeah.
I think I was rambling.
No, you weren't. And it was a good time for you to ramble because I have to duck because I have to go let my dog out and then get ready for tomorrow's bullshit
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking, Nathan. This has
Oh,
been great as always. I love it when you come on my show. Um,
thank you for ever having me on your show. That's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done. No, thank you. I'm always happy to be here literally anytime I can be.
Everybody F's in the chats for Nathan. Listen to Mark's Madness. His show's great. Thanks for hanging out. Feel free to go.
Yes. All right. Yes.
Bye.
Listen to
Bye,
me, people.
man.
Let us listen to Stay Inside. Love you. See you guys.
Yeah. So, thanks, Nathan, for coming on. Hope your puppies are great. Uh, yeah, guys, thanks so much for being here. I think that unless anybody has any like questions, uh, for me to iterate, I think we've really sort of grinded down like what is to be done. I mean, that's kind of what I feel like. I'm unable to talk about anything now, uh, just because I've sort of seen a kind of clarity of what could be done. Um, in revisiting that book for the first time in over a decade, really gave me a sort of sense that like this is something that absolutely needs to be the project, right? And like if you can't have these structures, what are we talking about? So, uh, you know, I'm gonna rail on it. Hopefully, if you want me to talk about other stuff, uh, we're going through that post-election leftist clarity. Yeah, I'm getting really tired of people saying, it's not. I don't mean to say what I'm about to say. I feel like the word leftist is really scary, and I always really kind of cringe at it. Leftist. I'm a communist. We're communists, guys. We want to end capitalism. We want to capture the state. You know, do we want to do authoritarianism? No. I mean, yeah, we do. We wanna crush the bourgeoisie. Um, we can be communist. It's cool to be communist. It's fine. Just like look, if you're an anarchist, you can be a communist too. And I think just before I go, and I've said this before, um, no diss to Scott. Um, say it if you want. I don't care. But no diss to anarchists either. But anarchist has also been tainted by not doing anything and uh, not being anti-plan. So, I think that in a communist situation, uh, anarchists are there to be the left wing of the party and to be constantly pushing the Communist Party left. Um, you know what I mean? Uh, in the sense of like, there is always chances of liberal reform. We've seen it. Um, we've seen that happening. It happened with Khrushchev. It happened with Deng. And we can argue all day if that was the right move, but I think that anarchists being like, "Hey, fuck you, let's not do this." We should keep the billionaires out, and if you are gonna do that, you better keep yourself. Keeping people accountable who are the leaders of a communist party is really important. Um, and anarchists absolutely should be involved and have either a separate party or a popular front or however they want to do it within the communist reconstruction. Um, I'm not anti-communist or um, anarchist. Uh, I'm a communist in the sense that I want to end capitalism by capturing the state and installing a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie and having a socialist phase, and then dismantling that structure, and then pushing towards an anarchist utopia. And if people want, I don't think it's worth it to say anarcho-communist, because that's the Marxist progression, right? The state withers away, and then but I don't think it can wither. I think Marx was, that's maybe, if anything, a translation issue. It's going to be deconstructed eventually. So just to be clear, don't want anybody mad. Want everybody to work together. So I don't include fucking social democrats in my leftism, so I just say communists. If you want to be a communist with me, let's be communists. Let's fucking create a party. Because who else has got an idea? You know what I mean? Like, no one else is like explaining their idea, explaining it, and then saying what would happen and how to do it. So that's what I think. Anyway, I'm gonna go now because I'm tired, and I'm just having a good time. So yeah, I really appreciate you guys. It's not that many people and comparatively, but I feel like you guys are all really really keeping me honest and really bringing a good energy. So have a lovely evening. And please, if you're here and you enjoyed this stream, follow, subscribe, whatever you do on Twitch. Follow me on Twitter. But also, please tweet at me things to do. Like, I really had fun. King Teef was like, it told me to do this weird test, and like we watched Vosh videos yesterday. All good stuff. So tweet at me stuff to talk about, topics. That really helps me get on a roll. And I'll do it more if you want me to do it more. So thanks, everybody.